Doctor Who Series 6 saw an unconventional split series format following a more American style model of featuring a mid-series finale. However, this also meant that the second half of the series needed its own big premiere of sorts, drawing viewers back into the show after a summer break and also continuing the storylines established in A Good Man Goes to War. Showrunner Stephen Moffat was keen to contrast The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon with a lighter, more comedic story Let's Kill Hitler. This episode is a chaotic, unstructured romp through 1938 Berlin as the Doctor, Amy and Rory discover the truth about River Song and the couple's childhood friend Mel's. It's safe to say that in a divisive series of Doctor Who, Let's Kill Hitler stands out as one of the most polarising. On one hand, it has plenty of answers and memorable moments, but on the other, does it suffer from too much going on and not really knowing what it wants to be? Well, shove your nearest dictator into a closet and get ready, because it's time to revisit the infamous Let's Kill Hitler.
Gosh, the Third Reich's a bit rubbish. I think I'll kill the Führer.
At the end of the climactic mid-series finale A Good Man Goes to War, the Doctor promised to track down and rescue Amy and Rory's daughter Melody, who had been kidnapped by Madame Kavarian and her forces of evil. The ending also revealing that the Doctor's longtime ally River Song was Melody this entire time. This was both a good cliffhanger and a clever use of the mid-series gap, giving the Doctor an off-screen quest away from his companions, along with justifying a short time skip both in the real world and the show, since the series took a break during the summer months of 2011. It's a clever way to turn the gap into a narrative tool, and I also love how Amy and Rory summon the Doctor back to Earth by drawing a crop circle to get his attention. It's a lot like the beginning of The Impossible Astronaut, where the Doctor was the one trying to get their attention by purposefully meddling with time and doing crazy things throughout history. It's a good parallel, both opening episodes mirroring each other with this inversion. However, even though he has had all summer, the Doctor was unable to find Melody, although conveniently, Amy and Rory's rebellious friend Mel's shows up to immediately flirt with the Doctor, and now I'm sure all these things are just a complete coincidence. Mel's is on the run for stealing a car, so she forces the Doctor to take them all back in time to kill Hitler, which is obviously one of the biggest and oldest dilemmas with time travel. You have the ability to travel backwards in time, which provides the opportunity to kill one of history's most vile and evil people before they can begin a bloody and destructive world war that kills millions. But you can't actually do it, because it would alter the entire timeline of the human race and probably erase you from existence. And it would be an especially bad idea if you're a weeaboo, because it would prevent anime from ever existing. However, a group of people who have found a way around the time travel issues are the crew of the USS Janitor, who use their Tesselector robot to perfectly replicate Zimmerman, a German officer guilty of hate crimes. No surprises there then. The Tesselector is a cool idea, this robot filled with tiny humans travelling through time to torture war criminals, and the replication visual is very high concept and cool, although they'd probably be stuck in Berlin for a long time if they want to mop up all the war criminals hanging around there during World War II. Their target this time is Big Adolf himself, played by Albert Welling. I've always found it weird when people get cast as Hitler, because imagine being at a casting agency and someone saying, "You know what? I think you would make an absolutely uncanny Hitler." Kind of feels like it would be a backhanded compliment to be told you'd be perfect as one of the most abhorrent and hateful figures in human history. Welling is definitely convincing though, even though Hitler is barely a part of the episode, despite the title being Let's Kill Hitler. Yes, despite the setup of the episode and the title, Moffat wanted to subvert expectations and essentially mock Hitler by turning him into a joke and relegating him to a complete afterthought.
Right, putting Hitler in the cupboard.
This is actually a fun and smart idea. Usually I'm against subverting expectations for the sake of it because it tends to feel like a cheap cop-out. But it works well for this episode because if there's anyone who should be turned into a laughingstock for all eternity, it's Hitler.
I'm getting this sort of banging in my head.
Yeah, I think that's Hitler in the cupboard.
That's not helping.
He was such an evil and dangerous person that mocking him reduces his harmful legacy and influence by transforming him from this feared and influential dictator into a complete joke nobody can take seriously or be scared of anymore.
Sit still. Shut up.
However, the episode definitely squanders a brilliant Doctor Who idea, since the Doctor accidentally saves Hitler's life, creating a wonderfully awkward scene as the protagonists realise exactly what they've just done. The Doctor has made it their mission in life to save lives and rescue people, so this scene provides a glimpse into the fantastic premise of the Time Lord accidentally saving someone they shouldn't, causing them to awkwardly dance around it because they can't exactly kill Hitler themselves. It does kind of come up again in The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar, but that was Davros as a kid. I would love a fully fledged story all about the Doctor becoming the world's most reluctant bodyguard and having to keep someone alive while hating every single second of it. So I feel like this episode misses a great opportunity.
He was going to kill me.
Shut up, Hitler!
When trying to shoot Zimmerman, Hitler accidentally hits Mel's and she drops their deathbed confession of being Melody all along. Wow, I never saw that coming. Not at all. It's weird enough that Amy named Melody after Mel's, because sure it's a cool bootstrap paradox, but Mel's has a complete disregard for life and the law, so is she really someone you'd want to name your daughter after? She's not exactly a good role model. But the worst part about this reveal is that Mel's literally didn't exist before this episode, never even in a throwaway reference. Moffat wanted to establish that Amy and Rory got to raise Melody after all, since the implications of her kidnapping were a bit too dark for family TV, so instead we're shown a very cringy montage of Amy and Rory's life with Mel's. It basically crams this entire history into a short 5-minute sequence to really try and sell you on the fact that Mel's is a completely normal person who just happens to have grown up alongside these characters and shared Amy's childhood obsession with the Doctor despite never having been named before. Oh, and she's also entirely responsible for Amy and Rory getting together in another weird bootstrap paradox, because their daughter makes them get together, therefore creating her own existence. So for someone with such an impact in their lives, you'd think they would have name dropped her at least once during all those moments where they were shown as being destined for each other. I guess they're just really ashamed of her. Oh, and also let's just hope that Amy never got curious with her best friend. Instead of Mel seeming like a lifelong friend Amy and Rory have grown up with, she feels more like Adam from Torchwood, someone who has forcefully implanted herself into their memories and is pretending to have been there for their entire lives, shaping their decisions and being a part of every major decision or life event. Oh look, there's another great episode concept down the drain. Shoehorning in Mel's is just way too convenient to treat her as a twist, and she also had about 20 years waiting until Amy was born, so I can't wait for Big Finish to squeeze another Melody incarnation or two in there, somewhere between 1969 and 1989. I bet she even fought in the Time War given their track record. The whole reveal of Mel's is quite predictable, or at the very least, not at all surprising, because this is a completely new character being introduced in this episode, despite that flashback showing she was friends with Amy and Rory for their entire lives.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about you. I'm their best mate.
Then why don't I know you?
Her regenerating into River feels like less of a surprise and more of an, oh, so that's why she wasn't a character before. The episode doesn't earn the surprise twist, since it throws this entire history at us all at once and pretends she was there all along. Compare this reveal to Utopia, which is another example of a surprise Time Lord and their regeneration. At the beginning of the Series 2 finale, the Doctor travels to the end of the universe and comes across the kind and optimistic Professor Yana. We've never met this character before, but it's okay because he's not a part of the protagonist's lives. We've never had a reason to meet him before, so he's just another side character. The series has also hinted towards the Doctor not being alone and introduced the idea of Time Lords hiding as humans. So when the episode climaxes with Yana being revealed as the Doctor's archenemy the Master, it's a dramatic and shocking twist. Most importantly, it's earned. Let's Kill Hitler had none of this foundation, falling completely flat because we've never seen Mel's before, despite the twist operating on the idea that she was an existing character we were familiar with. It feels like Moffat could have planned this a lot better from the beginning, especially since he apparently had these ideas from the get-go. Even if he couldn't go all the way by having Mel's physically appear in episodes like The 11th Hour or The Big Bang, he could have at least included some throwaway dialogue about her missing the wedding in The Big Bang, or she could have been hanging around with a couple at the beginning of The Impossible Astronaut. There were so many ways to at least hint at this mysterious, chaotic friend obsessed with the Doctor. But the way Let's Kill Hitler does it is pretend she was there all along, so the episode treating the Mel's reveal like a big shock doesn't work because the audience has no familiarity with her, and it has no effect as a dramatic revelation. It is cool that we get to see Melody's full regeneration, only the third non-Doctor character to fully regenerate on screen. It's a good moment in concept, seeing the very first moments of River, but it's completely derailed by the shoehorning in of Mel's up to that point. It's a nice touch that she doesn't know who River is yet because she hasn't taken that name, but her post-regeneration madness is way too sexed up, Moffat furiously writing one-handed. Going off this, I guess the Joanna Lumley Doctor wasn't a parody after all.
And of course, my sonic screwdriver.
Look, it's got 3 settings.
If Moffat could keep his horniness levels down for 5 minutes, this scene could have been a brilliant look at the origins of this character, whose past has been an enduring enigma ever since her introduction in Series 4. It might have actually been better if Moffat had saved the revelation of River being Melody for this episode, instead of having her tell Amy and Rory at the end of A Good Man Goes to War. Having the twist in Let's Kill Hitler would have made this reveal a complete shock for everyone and sell the bizarre madness of the whole situation. We'd have to deal with the earth-shattering reveal that River was Melody all along, and the episode would be able to explore that, how she was hiding in plain sight, and also adding more intrigue to her not even knowing who River is. However, the need for A Good Man Goes to War to have an explosive cliffhanger completely sabotages the reveal of River in Let's Kill Hitler, because we already know. It was literally spelled out for us the episode before, so it's weird that the protagonists act like they don't know and that they're only now struggling to deal with the revelation of who she actually is. I just feel like the entire opening of this episode hinges on things we already know and a twist regarding a character we've never met before, so it completely falls flat.
Who is this River?
Something that was established in A Good Man Goes to War was that Melody Pond was genetically engineered by the Kavarian chapter to kill the Doctor, which is a really interesting premise, kind of like an extreme escalation of Turlo, a companion who was trying to kill the Doctor. It is a bit ridiculous for the antagonist to go through such effort when the Doctor has already proved easy to catch and kill, especially because there's no real reason to make Melody a Time Lord as well, although it does establish high stakes by showing just how far the villains are willing to go to kill the Doctor. I have a love-hate relationship with Melody's initial attempts to assassinate him. It's basically a mix of the Curse of Fatal Death and Boomtown, a fun sequence as the Doctor predicts her moves and foils her plans in a game of one-upmanship. But it's so frustratingly Moffat, the writing trying to be all clever and up his own arse. It's pure show-offy energy, but I can't help but respect the ego necessary to do such a thing. However, he does make up for it by having the Doctor completely miss her final trick of using poison lipstick. It's smart because this kind of thing has been shown as one of her favourite things to do, constantly using hallucinogenic lipstick to escape prison or distract people. So for the Doctor himself to fall victim shows that he is fallible, instead of being the completely omniscient and godlike figure Moffat loves to write him as. There's a good scene as the Doctor lays dying in the TARDIS, the voice interface taking the form of the previous New Who companions and causing the Doctor to feel intense guilt for ruining their lives. I appreciate this because it shows that he doesn't just forget about them. He remembers and blames himself for Rose being trapped in a parallel world, Martha going through a year of hell to save him, and Donna's memory and identity being permanently wiped. It adds some more depth to the main character, showing how he hasn't just been able to let go of past companions due to guilt. I like to imagine it cycled through a lot more companions because he'd feel guilty for those too, not just the modern ones. However, the interface eventually settles on the one person the Doctor hasn't messed up yet. Amelia Pond. It's brilliant attention to detail that it's Amelia and not Amy, because he definitely ruined her life after that initial encounter. It's quite emotional as the Doctor begs the interface to help him deal with the pain and constantly calls it Amelia despite its corrections. It really shows his desperation alongside his strong emotional attachment to Amy, although much like in The Impossible Astronaut, I hate that fish fingers and custard is used as a dramatic plot device, since it was just a throwaway joke in the 11th hour and shouldn't really mean anything beyond that. After seemingly succeeding at her assassination mission, Melody decides to hit the town, literally shrugging off an entire firing line and sending an actual no you to the soldiers because she's still within the first 24 hours of her regeneration. Personally, I find this completely ridiculous. The Christmas invasion suggested that Time Lords can regrow limbs in this time frame because of the regeneration ability, but to suggest you can withstand being shot multiple times is utterly absurd and completely changes the lore for no real reason other than being a comedic scene. I would understand if this was something to do with the genetic engineering, but it's never explained, instead implying that Time Lords are completely invincible immediately after regenerating and can do whatever they want. And then, at about the 28-minute mark of the script, Moffat started dual screening Inglourious Basterds and Terminator, because Melody storms into a hotel to shoot up the place and demand everyone's clothes.
Now look at that. Now that's fun. From every angle.
No, Moffat, you can't have a one-handed keyboard. The writer's weird horniness for River Song aside, I do like seeing her as an antagonist in this episode. Obviously she's not actually River yet, but it's cool to see the familiar face of Alex Kingston being turned into a psychopathic villain. We've become so used to River being an ally of the Doctor, showing up to help him out and flirt with him whilst defeating monsters. So by taking her and turning her into such a vicious and thoughtless serial killer, it creates some great dissonance for both the viewer and the characters, since she's unpredictable and very murdery.
Take off your clothes.
Amy and Rory take a significant backseat during this story, but Rory still gets a lot of fun moments, like punching Hitler and tricking another German soldier with a Heil just to punch him too. Rory gets lots of quips and hero moments, which is fun, and Arthur Darvill shines with all the comedy.
Can you ride a motorbike?
I expect so. It's that sort of day.
However, because of plot reasons, Amy and Rory get taken into the Tesselector, which is kind of convenient, the crew letting them hitch a ride into the climax of the story instead of just dumping them into a cupboard with Hitler. But ignore the plot contrivances because, haha, look, the Doctor is back and dressed up all smart. Yes, since the Doctor is never one to die easily or simply, he decides to put on a bit of a show, making the most of his last half hour of life, because Moffat absolutely loves to write incarnations of the Doctor this way.
And you stopped to change?
Oh, and he also randomly has a sonic cane now, something that never existed before and never exists afterwards. The TARDIS has already shown it can just spit out a new sonic screwdriver, but I guess when you're dying you go through an end-life crisis and decide to make anything sonic just for the banter. Despite Melody's murdering of the Doctor, he won't allow the Tesselector to take her because he's against the torturing of war criminals, displaying worrying signs of 13th Doctor morality. It's a weird scene, the Doctor playing a pedantic game of semantics because he technically isn't dead yet, so disagrees with the Tesselector targeting Melody. It's one of those scenes that just happens and nobody really knows what's going on because there's so much talking that barely serves the story. And because Amy is family, she has privileges within the Tesselector and can access the Doctor's personal records on his behalf, leading to a bunch of exposition about the Silence and the overall Series 6 story arc.
The Silence is not a species. It is a religious order or movement.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that all for us, Moffat. You couldn't have, I don't know, done this in A Good Man Goes to War, rather than introducing the Headless Monks for almost no reason? Surely it wouldn't have been out of place to put the Silence in there since we already know they were related to all of this. But no, we get it all explained to us by a robot. Wait, hang on a minute, that's not Stephen Moffat, that's a mask. And underneath it's, oh my god, it's Chris Chibnall. Thanks to the Tesselector hunting war criminals, we find out that Melody is the one who kills the Doctor at Lake Silencio, which is explained as being a fixed point in time, an absolutely confirmed death that cannot be altered. It's a good way to remind you of his looming death, which we saw in The Impossible Astronaut. The series has never suggested that it's not permanent, so I appreciate this episode continues to drive the point home and legitimise his death, maintaining the shock of the scene and keeping it a key plot point for the series as it continues to get closer and closer. But because the Doctor is on the verge of death around 200 years early, the Tesselector begins torturing Melody, prompting Amy to almost genocide an entire ship of over 400 people, rather than simply asking them to stop. That's some brilliant decision making there, Amy, because extortion and murder is always the way to save the day. I mean, that's also basically what the Doctor does to Melody, guilt-tripping her into saving her parents before they can be killed by the funny robots inside the Tesselector. The droids are very Douglas Adams with their humorously polite declarations of your impending death. They're still quite sinister because they randomly appear and cannot be bargained with, but their dialogue is so blunt and funny. I know we see this kind of joke with robots all the time in pieces of media, but it's some good comedy very fitting for Doctor Who.
Please cooperate in your officially sanctioned termination.
Because she was conceived on the TARDIS, Melody immediately knows how to fly it, which I hate. It was always implied that she learned to fly it due to her years of being with the Doctor and how close their relationship was. But in this episode it just turns around and says, lol, no, she always knew how to fly it perfectly because she was conceived there, and the TARDIS taught her everything all at once. Let's Kill Hitler falls into the prequel trap of giving a character everything at the same time. It's like having some long and detailed backstory for Han Solo's gun or clothes, rather than them just being things he uses and wears. It's unnecessary and reduces a character to basic surface level elements. We didn't need to see how River got her name. We didn't need to find out how she could fly the TARDIS. We didn't need to see her being given her diary. And we really didn't need to see where her obsession with the word spoilers comes from. It's all superfluous and unnecessary. Putting things in the story because of recognisability rather than actually allowing her to be a character. We also see exactly when, where and why she becomes an archaeologist, rather than it simply being a thing she did. Literally, her main reason for going into that profession is because she wants to find the Doctor, which completely strips away her agency as a character. Oh, and calling it Lunar University is clearly just Moffat's way of trying to improve the ranking by time travelling back to 2011 and naming a university after my girlfriend. But that's the oldest trick in the book, so it won't work on me, Moffat. The big emotional climax sees the Doctor desperately trying to save Amy and Rory despite being seconds away from death himself. It's a good way to show the character's determination and refusal to give up as long as there's still hope, although there's no more hope for him. It's weird because we've already seen his seemingly permanent death, which makes this a fake out death faking out a fake out death. I guess that's just Stephen Moffat for you. All throughout the episode, the protagonists have been instinctively calling Melody River, despite her not being called that yet. Which leads to Melody finding out she is River, and wow, this is getting complicated with all the character revelations upon character revelations, because the characters themselves don't know everything we do. The episode then ends with a newly anointed River using up all her regenerations to bring the Doctor back to life, conveniently making it impossible for her to survive her death in the library. It's baffling because it's a solution to a problem Moffat himself created. He was the one who gave River the ability to regenerate, and that was only like 6 episodes ago. So this whole scene was unnecessary, turning regeneration into a complete plot device. Sure, it's sweet to see Melody turn good and become River by saving the Doctor, but it feels like Moffat wanted the reveal of Mel's, so he worked backwards to make River a Time Lord just for that single reason, rather than it servicing any kind of story. Oh, and I'm also docking the story at least 2 ranks for this.
Rule 1. The Doctor lies.
I've hated this ever since its first appearance because it's a borderline character assassination within a single sentence, made even worse because it's actually the Doctor saying it. At least in the Big Bang it could be explained away as River's own perspective, but nope, apparently it actually is his #1 rule. The fact he has all these rules is bad enough to begin with, one of the most frustrating Moffatisms that tries way too hard to box up the Doctor as a person and give him these weird arbitrary character traits just for the sake of it. So this line is unforgivable. Let's Kill Hitler is not a good opener for the second half of Doctor Who Series 6. The misdirection of Hitler is fun, but it becomes a bit annoying because there's way too much happening with loads of concepts and ideas not being fleshed out or used properly. There's barely a plot and it doesn't know what it wants to be, unsure of whether to commit to pure comedy or be a serious episode with lots of comedic beats. The pacing is all over the place, going from one long scene in a single room to another long scene in a single room, making it feel cheap and cost effective rather than the big, expensive and visually impressive Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. The episode relies on the Mel's reveal, but it doesn't work at all because she never existed before the episode, so it's not the big surprise the story wants it to be. It's very much one of those Moffat stories where he tries to be smarter than everyone else and show off, but instead ends up coming across as pretentious and up his own arse. Therefore, I would give Let's Kill Hitler an E ranking on the Series 6 tier list, because it just fails at its purpose. It has a lot of charm and some good stuff going for it, like Rory punching Hitler, and Alex Kingston and Arthur Darvill are the standout performers, but the bad more than outweighs the good. A big part of the episode simply doesn't work. The stakes are all over the place, and the Tesselector doesn't really do anything in the story apart from existing to set up the solution in the finale. It's also pretty much the definitive moment that River became insufferably flanderized, being boiled down to her most basic character traits. Every element of her personality and her backstory is introduced and explained within this single adventure, which removes a lot of the mystique and intrigue surrounding the character. Oh, and Moffat gets way too horny for River in this episode. It's borderline uncomfortable to watch, like it's his secret dirty fanfiction accidentally being turned into a real episode. And come to think of it, it's weird how often that seems to happen. And I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my Diamond level patron Fallon Cortez, and all my Gold level patrons Alex Marston, Basil Disco PhD, Calvin, Daniel Shillito, Franz Horn AK Line Vortex, Herna Verzog, Luke_SY, and Stefan Never Miller. Thank you so much for all the support.